For as long as Siege has had an esports scene, the closest thing we've had to a World Cup was the annual Six Invitational, and that's where we also crown our world champion. But just yesterday, Ubisoft announced another layer of international competition with an actual World Cup format, meaning we now have a split between club play and country play. We've had national tournaments before and times when a full team of players from one country would face a full team from another, but now there's a legitimate international national team intercompetition thing. It's actually not that hard to understand. I'm just making it seem it's not that hard. Something important to keep in mind is that this process begins on September the 14th, but the first games in the series aren't actually played until early 2021, so there's plenty of time for teams to get situated and to pray that COVID settles down enough so that we can actually have this grand final happen on LAN. Wear your masks, people. First, countries select a national committee comprised of 3 representatives, one from Ubisoft, one selected by pro players and coaches from that country, and another from that community. These 3 then select the 5-player roster, and the only requirements for the roster are be a legal citizen before 2020 began, be 18 before September 2020 started, and have no more than 2 players from the same club play together on the national team. The deadline for that last one is November 2020, which is just kind of assuming that teams might change again after Stage 2 or the November Major. 45 countries are being included, but 14 of them have been auto-invited to the Grand Finals in summer, and the other 31 have to play in region-specific qualifiers to determine who those final 6 spots go to. 2 for Europe, 1 for Latin America, 1 for South Asia, 1 for APAC North, and the final one for the Middle East and North Africa. When we get to the finals, it is 20 teams total, and a little bracket play later, we'll have the inaugural winner of the Rainbow Six World Cup. That's all the info we've got for right now. So far, this has already sparked some interesting debate, one of which is the countries who get a free ticket to the finals and the other ones that have to qualify. The 14 auto teams are the United States and Canada, Brazil and Mexico, Germany, Spain, Russia, France, Italy, and the United Kingdom, and Japan, Korea, Australia, and Taiwan. Immediately I see a problem with this list. Finland should have gotten one of those spots, like, hands down. Probably also Sweden. You can swap Italy out for either one of them because Chaos is still 3/5 Swedish, and ENCE had an entire Finnish team win a Pro League Finals event in Year 2 Season 3. Either one of those makes way more sense to me. Aside from that, I don't really disagree with any of the country picks. The US, Brazil, Russia, France, and probably Germany stand out to me as powerhouse regions. I'm not making any predictions here. There won't be any cursing countries this far away from the finals, trust me. The second thing to consider is the 2 players per club team rule. This basically means you can't have the whole Liquid team stand in for Brazil or the whole Dark Zero team for the US. Teams have to be built from more than just their existing infrastructure. Though for countries with not as many notable players, I wonder if some exceptions might be made for that rule in the future. That's the only issue that I have with this. If, for example, Sweden's team ends up being the 3 Swedes on Chaos plus Fabian and, I don't know, MXKX, that makes perfect sense because it's a representation of the best players from that country, but under this 2 players rule, you'd only be able to have 2 of those Chaos players participate. You won't be nearly as hard-pressed to find German or Australian or American players from different teams to help fill their national ones, but for countries that don't have nearly as many players at a very high tier of play, then there might be a chance that someone isn't able to represent their country under this ruling unless it gets bent by a little bit. At least that's how I see it. It's a situational thing, but once we get closer to the actual team selection process, we'll see if that becomes a thing or not. The last thing I thought of when I saw this announcement is, I don't know how seriously teams are going to take this. To me, this is essentially going to be a glorified show match bracket. Look at World Cups for other esports or even other traditional sports and tell me if you think players are more invested in their club competition or in the World Cup one. Siege hasn't had this system in place before, so maybe given a few years it can become a bigger deal, but right now, I 100% guarantee players will care more about the regional league competitions than they will care about this. To prove that your national team is an accurate representation of how good your country is at Siege will take as much, if not more, prep time and practice as you would undergo with the team that you're signed to. For example, if you play for TSM and have to split your attention between the North American League and the World Cup, which one do you focus on? Probably the NAL. That to say, though, there's bound to be some teams who will want to focus on that national pride. Like, knowing how passionate Brazil is at Siege, if they grab 5 insane guys and play the LATAM way, then they could absolutely steamroll their way to the top of this tournament. if they take it seriously. But regardless, I am happy to see that this is a thing. It's another way Ubi is slowly expanding the CG sports ecosystem and turning it into something more substantial as time goes on. And what I love seeing on Twitter is everyone's ideas for who each country's team will be comprised of. People are literally creating dream teams for different national squads, and it's really neat to imagine what those will look like when they're announced. Hit me with some team ideas in the comments and go digging online to come up with teams for other countries that you're not nearly as familiar with. We've got 45 different rosters that are going to be involved in this thing, so let's get creative and see who all was involved where. I like this. Let's see where this goes. I just really hope that we can actually have this on land eventually, and that America wins, because duh. That is all from me. Hopefully we get the news about when the North American League starts pretty soon, because the European League is slated to start in just over a week for Stage 2, and the NAL has been pretty dormant about details on when that begins. So hit up my Twitter, my Twitch, and this YouTube channel for more in the coming days. Please and thank you, and I very much appreciate the response to the video from earlier this week. You guys are amazing. I'll talk to you later. Peace!